Time After Time. Now, please welcome the writer and director of Time After Time, Nicholas Meyer, and the star of Time After Time, Malcolm McDowell.
How nice to see you all. My God.
First of all, thank you both for joining us tonight. Malcolm especially as well, too. I know you had another event this evening.
I did.
And you joined us, so thank you.
I have been giving an award to Joshua Bell. Do you know who he is?
Violinist. Yeah, of course.
That's it. Exactly. One of the great violinists that are working today. He's such a great guy. And yeah, so that's where I was. So I missed this film, I'm sorry to say, but hey, good to see you. You don't age much, do you? Well, thank God your hair's going gray, at least.
Silver.
Silver? Oh, okay. Okay, silver.
Well, I have a few questions I'm going to open up to you guys as well, too. So we'll begin with how Time After Time came your way, Nicholas, and then what inspired you to option it and turn it into a feature film?
After the success of the novel, The 7% Solution, a man named Carl Alexander, who was at the writer's workshop with me in Iowa City, whose uncle is a famous Hollywood writer, he gets sole screen credit on Ben-Hur, which, by the way, he doesn't deserve. But anyway, Carl came to me and said, I'm writing a novel that is sort of loosely inspired by the 7% solution. And I have 65 pages and an outline, and I wonder if you would read it and give me a critique. And I said, sure. And I read his 65 pages and his outline, and I told him what I thought as best I could. I actually thought that I remember thinking that this was such a brilliant idea, which I would never have in a bazillion years because I don't get ideas.
Ah, so that's why you stole it. Oh, okay.
I've got the paperwork. I didn't steal it. I paid up for it. But basically, I said he doesn't even realize that it's much more a visual idea than it would be a literary idea, and an inexpensive idea. All I need is two people in Victorian costumes running around a world in which, seen through their Victorian eyes, everything becomes sci-fi hardware. I was very influenced in my thinking by a Jean-Luc Godard film called Alphaville, with an American actor who lived in Paris, Eddie Constantine. Anybody seen Alphaville? Has anybody seen it? Okay, so you know that it was all about renaming objects. You know, hand me that communicator, and he gives them a book or something. It was just all in your head. And I thought, yeah, they might even let me, you know, well, actually, my thought process was slower. It was like, you know, 3 months later that I wake up and go, well, schmuck, why don't you just option his book? Mm-hmm. And that's basically what I did and how it came to be.
Now, Malcolm, can you talk a little bit about coming on board and what attracted you to this, about the script?
I was so happy that he asked me to do H.G. Wells. So kudos to this one, because normally I'd be asked to play Jack the Ripper. And I think I was doing Caligula in Rome, and I was like, over that, big time. And I suddenly read this lovely script, and it was beautifully written by Nick. You know, he did a fantastic job on the script, and I was just absolutely so thrilled to get away from the madness of fucking Rome and those crazy penthouse pets. Although that was one of the little treats. Yeah, I don't know why I even mentioned that, but. So I was thrilled that he cast me in that part, and then he cast, you know, a really great great actor, David Warner, who I was a great friend of. We were friends at Stratford-on-Avon in 1963, I think. Maybe 4, I can't remember quite, but I remember Patrick Stewart was a member of the company, and he was playing old men even then. It was a fun time, and you know, Warner he was doing this Hamlet that was absolutely the modern Hamlet of his generation, and you know, he looked like Blifil, you know, from Tom Jones, and he's thin as a rail, had a huge sort of scarf on, and always depressed, which was David, you know, that was just him. And I'd say to him, I played a very small part, 12 lines or something, but I'd say to him, why are you doing it so fast? And he'd say, because I just want to get the hell out of here. But that was David, you know, and every time that he'd come out of the stage door, there'd be 300 screaming girls. It was like working with the Beatles. And this is, you know, classical theatre. And so we became friends, and he was always a strange guy, but a lovely, lovely actor. I thought he was an absolutely great actor. I saw him in a few things. The Inspector General, the
Gogol.
Exactly, and directed by Peter Hall. He was brilliant in that. And, you know, he did a lot of great things, and so we became good friends, and so when this came up, it was heaven sent, you know, it was great. But, as we know, we were watching the thing in the fine arts thing that night. Oh my God, remember that night? Where he had a line about his mother or something, and he melted down. I was like, just get the fucking line out about your mother, Jesus, it's 4 o'clock. And he was like, calm down, you know, my mother, it's so meaningful to me. And I was like, well, Jesus, just say the line. You were going crazy. You know, that, I think in the end.
We did it off camera.
Just have him throw it in. Let's get the hell out of here. I know, it was so
He had a thing, David. This was the first movie that I ever directed, and I was, you know, very lucky that I was so surrounded by talent that people just, you know, stopped me from screwing it up, you know. And but I had very scant idea other than to keep the thing in focus and stay on the script. And David kept coming up to me at the beginning of every thing, and he would keep going, small takes, and I didn't know what he was talking about. Well, this was his great fear, small take, and so I didn't know a small take from a long take, and I just said sure, and we would do whatever we were doing, and he was always fine. And finally, at the end of the picture, by which time I'd become pretty cocky about the whole thing, he came up to me and said, you know, apropos of something, you know, short takes. I said, David, you've performed Hamlet, which is 4 hours. You are the most celebrated Hamlet of your age. You don't seem to have any trouble with that. What is all this about short takes? You've never muffed a line. And he looked at me and said, well, it's part of my process then, isn't it? I don't know what that. I got into fascinating conversations with him, also about Hamlet. At one point, we were discussing the Ernest Jones book, Hamlet and Oedipus, and I said, "What do you think of this thesis that the reason Hamlet can't kill Claudius is that Claudius has done what he would like unconsciously to do?" And David said, "It's a very interesting idea, but it's unplayable because an actor can't play an unconscious motive of which he was unconscious." I also used him in Star Trek VI as well. And the thing about casting Malcolm as the hero, the fights that go on with studios about stuff is just amazing. And when I came up with the Malcolm idea, and I used to work, my first job out of college was in the publicity department of Paramount Pictures in New York, which was in Times Square, where during the low point of New York, where there's nothing but hookers crawling all over that place, and the first day you went to work, you kind of went down like this, and then later it was, "Hi, Gladys." Paramount was on a roll. They were making a whole bunch of movies for $2 million a pop.
That was Evans.
One of which was a movie called If, which was the first time I got a load of this gentleman, and also learned the Miss Aluba at the same
I
time.
chose that. Do you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. I played that at my school, and Lindsay said, "What do you think? What music?" And I went, "How about the Miss Aluba?" And he went, "Oh, yes, that sort of. There's one in South America, and there's one from the Congo." And I went, "No, the Sanctus." And it was the weirdest thing because there was, I was a young kid, my first movie, and I'm playing this music. They must have cleared the rights, of course. And cut 6 months later, I'm walking down Oxford Street, number 5 on the charts, Sanctus, Miss Aluba. Now, and these guys, they don't even know they should be thanking me. But If was a great movie, and it was a great director, of course. And in fact, it was Kubrick that saw that film and cast me in Clockwork Orange.
Well, he was not alone because I saw it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Had a
Well, there's
similar-
another one.
So, but I remember going to Warner Brothers and saying, Malcolm McDowell, and they're going, "But he's the villain. He's always the villain." And I said, "Yes, but this time he's going to be the hero, and that's acting." And the other one that was interesting was they wanted Mick Jagger to play the Ripper. And I thought about this, and I thought, well, I could see him as the Ripper. I just couldn't see him as a Harley Street surgeon, no way, no how. So I said, absolutely not. And they said, "You mean you won't even meet with him?" And then I started to understand how this game is played, that I was going to have to go and meet with him. And he was on tour. He was in L.A., and I went and met with him, and then I said, "No!"
Did you see the show, at least?
No. I didn't.
Probably just as well. But, Nick's Mick, he said to me once, "Well, I can't see myself doing this when I'm 50. God, no. Oh, Jesus. No, I can't see that. How old is he now? 75?
He produced one of my all-time
he's
favorite
amazing.
movies. He produced a movie called Enigma with Lorne Michaels.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's Lorne Michaels. Called Enigma, directed by Michael Apted, with Dougray Scott and Kate Winslet.
It's a very good film.
It's a Tom Stoppard script.
Yeah.
Now, I know on the audio commentary you talked about how you listened to a recording of H.G. Wells' voice, but
Yes.
heard how high-pitched and kind of squeaky it was and chose to
Forget
make it
it.
your own.
Well, I had a friend, I think I even shared this with you at the time, I don't know, but I thought, well, I'm going to Hollywood to do this film about H.G. Wells, I better do, what do they do there? I mean, they're method actors, I better do a bit of methods. So I called up a friend of mine at the BBC and said, "Do you have any recordings of H.G. Wells, supposed to be playing him?" He said, "Actually, we do. We have a 78 gramophone record, all cracked and squeaky, and it came by messenger. It was in a plain brown paper thing, and I
It was
put
that
it.
kind of record.
Yeah, I put it on, and he talked like that. He talked South East London, and I don't know. I just thought, fucking hell, I can't do it like that. Because I don't think they like that in Hollywood, would they? No? Would you like if I come in like that? Wells? No, I don't think so. So I just thought, oh my God, that's and of course, why would H.G. Wells have a BBC voice? Why would he? I mean, he didn't. He was from South East London, and
His mother was a housemaid.
yeah, I'm not surprised. Shouldn't say that, should I? Anyway, I'm not surprised actually because the accent gave it away. Anyway, so dear H.G., who had these wonderful ideas, and by the way, I got to know the American H.G. Wells. God, what's his name? Ray Bradbury.
Oh, that's
And
very
he loved this movie. Ray Bradbury just absolutely loved Time After Time, and he considered himself the American H.G. Wells, which he was. He was an absolute and utter delight.
I have to tell my Ray Bradbury stories. Ray Bradbury wrote the screenplay for John Huston's Moby Dick, which is an absolutely fantastic movie, brilliant movie. And in the days before any of you were born, which is to say before VHS and all of that, the only place to see movies was either on TV or in movie theaters, and there was a movie theater in Venice called the Fox Venice, which is now a 99-cent store or something. But I saw this Moby Dick was playing, and a friend of mine who was an executive at Fox, who went on to such notoriety as having made Heaven's Gate, and I said, David, you've never seen the John Huston Moby Dick? We're going down to the Fox Venice, and I think I was driving an MG or an Alfa Romeo. We were down there. And in order to fully get the impact of the story, you have to understand I was wearing a very striking, I'm not saying good, bad, I'm just saying striking, car coat, a sheepskin car coat that was blue.
Boy racer.
For driving in this car at night when it was chilly and the top was down, whatever. And I'm in the men's room, and I realize that standing at the urinal next to me is the extremely nearsighted Ray Bradbury, who, P.S., that's P.S., not piss, doesn't drive a car. And I said to him, as we were washing our hands, I said, so you're here to see the movie? He said, yes, I am. I said, one thing I've always been curious about, the movie has one of the most striking scores ever written for a film. Do you know anything about this man, Philip Sainton, who wrote it? Because he never wrote another score. And he said, no, I wasn't part of the production at all, so I can't speak to that. Anyway, we'll watch the film, come out of the film, and there's Ray Bradbury making a phone call. And I said to my friend David, he's calling for a car. This was pre-Uber. And I said, let's give him a lift. So I said, Mr. Bradbury, can we give you a lift going to Westwood? He said, sure, absolutely. So the three of us are jammed into this car. He's right next to this blue sheepskin car coat, and we're talking about the movie, and I said, I can't get over this amazing score. And he said, that's so funny. There was a guy in the men's room who was asking me. And I'm looking at David.
Speaking of scores, you have this knack of picking really great composers for your films. You know, with Star Trek II, with James Horner, with Star Trek VI, Cliff Eidelman. For Time After Time, Miklos Rozsa. Can you talk a little about working with him on this?
Yeah, by way of explanation, I come from a family that are all musicians. My mother was a concert pianist. My grandfather was in the Boston Symphony. So I grew up with it. And when it came time to do the music for this, I thought everything should be seen from Wells's perspective. And Wells is a 19th century man, so I wanted any pop music to be, in effect, one of the sound effects, one of the sci-fi appurtenances, but the emotional sensibility should be, so I thought, you know, go for broke, get Nicholas Meyer. And
was this his last movie?
I think Eye of the Needle may have been the last, or Last Embrace. Those were the, but it was certainly toward the end.
Towards the end.
We got to be very good friends. I used to go have tea at his house on Mulholland Drive, which was like being in an Italian villa. I don't know, and there was a lot of art there that I don't know how he got out of Italy. Etruscan art, stuff like that.
He stole it. That's how he got it. It's the only way to get it.
Probably.
Believe me, I know, because I've tried stealing it too. And Peter O'Toole stole it. Went down these tombs, the catacombs, and he goes, darling, what you've got to do is you've got to crawl down the drains where all the bodies go down with the water. You go down the drain and you get hands full of gold and lots of rings and stuff. I mean, are you kidding? He goes, no, he did Man of La Mancha, and that's what he was doing in his spare time. I mean, seriously, he'd come up with all this stuff. It was all the mafia, you know. I mean, he wrote to God. Did you ever work with him?
No, I wanted to. I wanted him.
Oh my God, he was hilarious. I worked with him in Caligula, and that was hilarious. I mean, just alone, because he was, you know, he'd found marijuana big time. I mean, he should have been growing it on a farm. He was getting rid of it so fast. And I had to go in and do lines with him. The producer said, go in and do lines because I think, you know, he's a little rocky on the lines. And this is night shoots. So I went in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We weren't called on the set till 4 in the morning. And I've been going through lines with him, literally chain-smoking joints. And with a cigarette holder. Darling, brother, let's do it Cockney now, shall we? Oh, let's do it Scottish. And by the time we got out, he was absolutely so ripped. And by the way, so was I on Contact. I was like, oh my God. And when we came out to see the set that had about 500 extras, and I think 2 of them were clothed. And he starts off, Rome is but a... Jesus, darling, have you seen what they're doing over here? And he goes, God almighty, there's one on a trampoline with a dildo. How am I supposed to learn this
You're gonna screen this movie. The end of the Roja story was that
Forget Roja, he's boring.
Warner's hated the score. And
It's a great score.
And they wanted to replace it. And they wanted Bill Conti. They wanted a pop score. They had absolutely no confidence in the movie at all until the preview went through the roof, and then it changed. I had this handsome letter of apology from Ted Ashley, who was the head of the studio. He said, 2 things I have in common with Fiorello LaGuardia is my height, and when I make a mistake, it's a beaut. I have the letter framed. In any case, they wanted to get rid of the score. I didn't want to get rid of the score. I didn't want to do anything they told me to. So what I did was I said to Herb Jaffe, the producer, whose son Steve also was the producer and regrets not being here tonight. He had to fly to New York. He said hello to you. That I said we should write Mickey a letter and tell him how much we love the score. And then we should publish the letter in Variety. And he said, oh, you're learning. So we published this 2-page ad in Variety about what a great score it was. And then he, after we were on the mixing stage, and he came in to be part of the mix, and he's sitting on a couch at the back, and I said, Mickey, did you see the trades today? And he said, no, I never read them. So we went on for a few hours, and I said, well, I'll just, leave it here. And at some point in the day, I said, will you please turn to page 34? So he opened it, he looked, and he said, I've scored 100 films, and no one has ever done this. We did not have the heart to explain the Machiavellian reasons behind it, but we kept our score. They couldn't take it away after that. So there was a lot of that. Not so good.
And I'm sure no one can imagine it without that score in there. I mean, as great as Bill Conti is, he wouldn't have been the right fit for this movie, I don't think.
Who knows?
Yeah. So there's so many fantastic things about Time After Time, but one of the great things about it, of course, is Mary Steen Virgin. And
absolutely.
I'd like to go ahead and get both your thoughts on, of course, working with her. Malcolm, of course, you ended up getting a wife out of this movie.
2 children.
Mhm, and 2 children.
I always say this is one of my favorite movies because it really led to 2 children, great children, and a beautiful wife for.
We had, the first time we met was on Madison Avenue in New York. We had tea,
Yeah.
which I don't drink, but I made an exception. And he said to me, "My leading lady, I'm going to tell me about her." And I said, "You'll love her." And you took directions so well. And when we were looking at dailies and looking at these scenes between them, and I thought, God damn, I'm good. And Nell Jaffe said, "No, I think they're falling in love." I said, "No.
That scene in the revolving restaurant is particularly a classic. And also we had to do it so fast.
Yeah, they were going to boot us out of the restaurant.
At 11 o'clock in the morning or something, so because they had their lunch, so we literally, we just did it, you know, and that's often the best way, of course, just to do it. And yeah, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful scene. And Mary, you know, is a wonderful actress. She gave a great performance, and then went on. The next one she did, she won the Academy Award. So
They're always a year. There's always retroactive by a year. It's the same thing with Liz Taylor and Butterfield Day. Yeah, it's a year late.
Well, let me go ahead. I want to open up. So I'm sure some of you out here have some questions. So right here.
First of all, I love this movie. I saw this when I was a kid, and it stuck with me my whole life. I'm a big fan of this film. I was just curious if there's anything that got cut or extra scenes that aren't in the movie that you wish you would have kept, or maybe are glad you cut, or anything.
I don't think so.
No.
Is the short answer. I don't.
we use everything, right? As far as
I think
Yeah.
I think initially in chronology he was in San Francisco, like there was another day in there, and somehow we managed to conflate the
Was it
day.
always San Francisco? Was there ever consideration for New York or anything like that?
No, when I came to California shortly after the Civil War, I did not come to Los Angeles. I came to San Francisco. I stayed with an aunt of mine who owned a place there, and I'd never been to California, didn't know anybody. And I stayed a month in San Francisco, which I fell in love with instantly. And when it came time to write this script, I just put every single thing that I loved in San Francisco in the movie. And, you know, that crazy palace of, you know, whatever, the Pan American
Fine Arts.
Exposition. The Palace of Fine Arts is different. This is something that's where the Exploratorium, it has another name. But I just put on all that stuff, and I don't think there's much that's not in the script. It was a very tight script.
Cool. You have another question out there?